Hey guys, just want to make this short and sweet. I've known Tim for about 23 years now. I competed against him for 6 to maybe 8, 10 years on the Iasca circuit, and he was absolutely my hardest competition every single time. He was the hardest guy to ever go up against. In 30 years of me doing this, I know I have consistently gotten better. Tim has put so much of a distance between the talent that I have and the talent that he has. He is an absolute benchmark by which I think everybody else in this industry is measured by. He is as good as it gets. In all the years of me doing this, I have never seen the quality of work come from anybody other than Tim that consistently. Questions I would ask you would be this: how many times has Tim been in magazines? How many times has Tim placed in Iasca, if not won, at the highest levels? How many times has he been a top 100, top 50, top 12 installer? How many times has he done that? He is consistently, I'll use the word benchmark, by which I think everybody else is measured by. I will say this as an absolute fact too. If there is one person on this planet that I will ever let touch my vehicle other than me, it's Tim, and it's for a reason. He is the best there is, period.
Solomon, guys, wanted to talk to you about Tim Baillie for Installer of the Year 2017. He comes from Canada. Got him up on the screen talking. He's a unique case. Like some of our Canadian counterparts up there, they don't have access to the materials that we do. They have a couple different struggles than the average installer, technician, fabricator in the US. And that's, like I said, it's limitations on materials, but then it's also the import-export fees they have to pay. They have some significant challenges, and then getting down to the US to be a part of these awards is also very expensive and challenging. That being said, it doesn't really deter Tim from producing great results. This guy has a keen attention to detail. He's always committed to kind of following that Jeremy Carlson, Matt Schaefer philosophy of OEM integration, serviceability, and also giving that customer that feel-good takeaway, that leaving them with a great impression, making them smile when they pick up the car, whether it's something as simple as installing a simple amp or doing a full custom build in a trunk. This guy, his attention to detail, his execution is on par with some of the greats. He's a firm believer in using sustained materials, using acrylics to build, things that otherwise would be pretty basic to make out of wood. He will engineer that part, and that speaks to his character. He wants to represent the industry in the best way possible. And reviewing his top 50 submission and just knowing Tim, it's obvious this is his passion, this is his home, and he puts a lot of time, effort, and energy into what he's doing, but he takes a lot of pride in his work, and he doesn't cut corners in the industry or in life. A lot of times you got installers that will scrape by with some cheap pliers and screwdrivers, and that's okay every now and then, but if you want to be taken serious and you want to produce some of the things that he's producing, you got to invest in yourself. And he's got one of the nicest tool selections I think anybody's got, and that's despite where he lives, the fees to get things. But that Snap-on toolbox he has, it speaks for itself, and anybody that will commit that to their tools, it says something about the installer, technician, fabricator that you have working on your vehicle. So if I was a customer coming into the shop and I saw that, I would have comfort knowing that my car would be treated at the highest level. And being a guy that's been in this industry as a technician, a salesman, a fabricator, business owner, I can tell you that I would have no doubts leaving my vehicle with a guy like Tim. And in fact, more often than not, I would prefer to have him work on the car than me. And that's because I know that he's going to care about it as though it's his own, but also with my interests and needs in mind. And he has to do that with his clientele, because he works on everything from your modern day racer to your 1930s Ford Coupe. and you cater to all different client bases, all different expectations, and I think he does that flawlessly. So that being said, I think, give him an honest look and consider him for Installer of the Year. And let's start showing our Canadian brothers some great support. Sean Bashara, where you at? Thanks, guys.
Hey guys, I'm Sean Bashara from Ottawa, Canada, and I just want to talk about Tim Baillie for a little bit. I've known Tim, I guess, since probably 1995-ish. It was during the Canadian car audio days. Tim has always been one of Canada's best fabricators and installers. He's done a lot for the industry as far as the stuff he did with Iasca, the stuff that he did building the Future Shop brand. The quality of work that he does is just amazing. Also, his wiring is impeccable, like a lot of the old hot rods and the older classic cars that he wired. I think he'd be a great choice for Installer of the Year. Thanks, man.
At the risk of betraying our age, I'm happy to say that I've known Tim for over 2 decades now. We met on the Iasca circuit back when it was all pretty fresh and everybody was trying to figure out how to make car audio systems sound good and not catch on fire. As soon as we met in the Tweak and Tune garage, I think it was 1992, I immediately got the passion thing. Tim is totally committed to doing cool things to cars and to making car audio systems that drop people's jaws. This is clear. He listened, he observed, he asked questions, then he went back to his shop in Canada, and every year he would come back, armed to the teeth, with significant improvements to his vehicles, based on all the things he had gathered and all the things he had learned. That passion thing is so important, but to achieve success you need more than passion. You also need the flip side of it. The part that takes everything seriously, that studies, the discipline, the part that makes investments and commits to doing every job right. This part became apparent over the years as Tim developed as an installer and a businessman. To put it simply, Tim put the work in and he kept raising his standards. In recent years, I've also witnessed Tim taking the time to help others, teaching younger installers and instilling the same values that have made him successful in this business. This is important too. There's a whole new generation of car audio professionals, and they need mentoring and guidance. Tim is always generous in this regard. So, why should Tim be considered for this great honor? Well, it isn't because he's passionate, or because he takes his work seriously, or because he teaches others. It's because he does all those things while consistently cranking out killer creative work that makes people happy and makes our industry look good. And he's been doing it for a long time. It's really the whole package.
My name is Tim Baillie, and I am the installation and fabricator technician here at Certified Auto Sound in Maple Ridge, British Columbia. I wanted to take a moment and talk about this award. I've been doing this over 27 years, and a few years into this career, I was at a buddy's shop in Seattle and I found a mobile electronics magazine, and I discovered this award that existed called Installer of the Year. And the cover of the magazine had Mark Fukuda was the Installer of the Year. And the magazine featured this build log for a cigarette boat that he had built. Now, I'd never heard of this award. I was intrigued because Fukuda was, my hero when it comes to this industry and the things that, I've learned from studying him. Once I found out about this award, I discovered that unfortunately it wasn't open to Canadians at the time. And to be nominated, you couldn't self-nominate yourself. It had to be done through the distribution, rep, or manufacturer side of the industry. But it was something that I put on my bucket list as something that I did want to try and achieve at some point in my career. Years later, I opened up my own business, and due to personal circumstances, the business had to close, and it really left a sour taste in my mouth, and I left the industry for a couple of years. I came back in 2014, and I discovered that now installers from Canada were eligible to compete for Installer of the Year. So I spent the remainder of 2014 and 2015 putting together the things that I needed to meet the requirements to be able to compete for Installer of the Year. And I had the huge honor of making the top 50 and then moving on to the next round and making the top 12. Making the top 12 was simply incredible. It was one of the biggest highlights of my career. 2016, I made the top 50, and then I made some career changes throughout the year that really I didn't like. I didn't like the direction I had taken, some bad choices. And with 2017 coming on board at Certified Auto Sound, I've really found a home here. My philosophy when it comes to installing and working on cars is keep it consistent with the car that you're working on. If the car has a theme, then keep it consistent with that theme and keep it relevant. One of the things that I've noticed over the last couple of years with social media is everybody wants to put out social media pictures of their work, which is a great thing because I do it myself. But I think that a lot of people tend to do these installations showing the latest techniques, materials, styles, etc. But they lose sight of the fact that maybe these things don't fit in the car that they're working on. While the installation looks great, it doesn't always match the car. And that's not a good thing for our customers. Whenever I'm finished with a job on a car, I like to know that I've left the car better than it was at the dealership. Whether it be in form, function, appearance, I want to be able to produce something in that car that they couldn't get from the dealer, but it looks like that it came from the dealer and the manufacturer. You also want to make sure that your cars are serviceable. I spend a lot of time designing and engineering my systems so that I can take them apart with relatively easy tools, minimal tools, or at least the same tools. I like to use the same type of fasteners so that I'm always going to know how a car comes apart, whether it be a socket head screw or just a Phillips screw. Things need to come apart easy. I'm always evolving my techniques and my craft when it comes to my profession. The one thing that I've always done the same way is design cars to sound good, to come apart, to have proper form and function with the car that the system's going into. Back when I may not have had some of the skills and techniques and knowledge that I have now, the job was always done 1,000% to my ability. Never slacked on a job, never cut corners. And I really think that this sets me apart from a lot of installers out there. This 2015 Challenger SRT8 is our company demo vehicle. So we wanted the system in the car to be played both when the car is running and when the car is not running at car shows, etc. And this presented us with a few challenges. We had a ton of equipment installed in the trunk of this car. We had a full air ride system. We had 4 JL HD amplifiers, each requiring 0 gauge power and ground. We had several relays, fuse blocks, 2 compressors for the air ride, a 3-gallon air tank, the AccuAir ECU for the air ride. And I started by taking PVC mounts, bonding them to the floor of the car so that all the components could be mounted without actually puncturing the sheet metal of the car. We had a lot of components and a lot of wiring that all had to be crammed into this very small spare tire opening. After installing the air tank, the compressors, and all of the air ride components, I then started wiring up for all of our relays, our amplifier power and ground and fuse blocks, as well as a factory suspension controller that needed to go in the trunk as well. To make sure that the second batteries always were charged and to keep it separate from the stock battery of the car, we added a SurePower intelligent battery separator, and this allowed us to have the stock car battery charge up, and then once it reaches 13.7, the auxiliary batteries would also charge up. Therefore, to show there's no way that the stereo, the lights, or anything would ever draw down the stock battery. So to make this system all run, we installed 3 rocker switches. One rocker switch was an interrupt switch on the air ride, so that when we're plugged into a power supply or charging the car, the air ride's not affected by the extra current from the charger. The second rocker switch was a remote turn-on override that also powered up a JL Bluetooth module. This was used so that when we're at a show and we want to demonstrate the stereo, we don't need to turn the car on at all. We don't need the stock radio or anything. The JL piece connects to a phone or a laptop and allows us to demo the system while not intruding in the stock battery system. The third rocker switch was installed so that we could also bypass the door opening circuit and the trunk circuit, so that all of the LED lights in the trunk, the doors, and the pillars would come on. I started by making an acrylic battery box to hold 2 Shuriken small batteries, made aluminum mounts to hold the batteries inside the box, and acrylic covers to protect the battery terminals. Once we had the trunk complete, we needed to make a mount for the AccuAir controller. I grafted that into the panel, filled it, primered it, sanded it, and then we sent it out to our company that does all of our vehicle wraps and decals and had it wrap in a dark gray carbon fiber that mounts the actual dash piece. Once I completed all of the wiring in the trunk, I took all of my notes and created a system diagram of all the wiring. This included the wiring of each relay, how they were wired, Molex plugs, barrier strips, and fuse blocks in the trunk, so that for myself or anybody else for future use would be able to figure out what was done and how it was wired in the trunk. I then installed a JL Audio tweak processor. This processor allowed us to have multiple settings for sources like our JL Audio Bluetooth module and our Amp Pro module off the stock deck. This allowed us to have a very loud, non-sound quality system off the Bluetooth module, and then have an extreme SPL output system with the doors closed, as well as using the digital output from the Amp Pro piece for more critical sound quality listening with also the doors closed. My installation education really started before I even knew that I wanted to do this as a career. My father was a mechanic on the electrical side of the industry, and he spent a lot of time working on cars at home. And like any kid, I'd be out in the driveway helping him work on cars, learning about cars. And the one thing that he really started teaching me was electrical systems. He would come home from work with used stereo equipment out of cars from the shop that the sales manager didn't want the stereo in. A lot of the used cars would come in with aftermarket stereo, which in the mid-'80s wasn't a whole lot, but they didn't want to have to deal with it on the lot. So they would ask him to remove it from the car and dispose of it. So he would bring it home and put it in his car, and I'd start helping him install this stuff in his car. I really had no idea what it was about, but I was really starting to enjoy it. So all through high school, I'd get this stereo equipment from my dad. I was always upgrading my car. But along the way, I was learning about electrical systems. I was learning how to read electrical diagrams, how voltage worked, grounding systems of a car, and so on and so on. And then as my systems got bigger and better, I started seeing a lot more cars out there, and I wanted to learn more about this industry because I was really, really intrigued by it. It kind of had a hold on me. So I was going to a lot of shops around town, asking questions, learning from installers, learning from salesmen, driving down to Seattle years later, hanging out at shops. And then the magazines came out. car audio electronics, car stereo review in '87, and that really changed things for me because it really allowed me to see a world that didn't really quite exist up here in Canada. And then the first Sound Off came to Vancouver, and that turned a passion into an obsession. And pretty much from that day on, I've gone full tilt, full forward with everything that I have in this car audio world to learn every aspect that I could and gain every ounce of information and education. I got my first car audio job in the industry in 1991. I'd been trying to get on at a few shops for a little while, and everybody would say, you know, with no experience, we can't hire you. So this ad said they were looking for car audio installers, no experience necessary, and they would train. So I was ecstatic. I went down the next morning, I applied, I got the job, and I thought I was in heaven. About 6 months into the job, a friend of my dad who owned a shop here in town told him about a school that he had heard about down in Orlando, Florida. It was the first car audio school ever. So my parents sat down with me and said, if this is something that you're serious about, we're going to send you to Florida and you're going to go through this course and you're going to learn what it is you need to do to be able to make this into an actual career. So I spent a couple weeks in Florida at the CMA Mobile Electronics School, came back, and now I had a diploma, I had experience from an existing shop, and I had a pretty good system in my truck that I was able to go to a very well-established shop and get a job as an actual installer now. This was so awesome for me because I really felt like everything was starting to come together for me. Real early on in my career, one of the things that I wanted to do was figure out a way to start making a name for myself while learning more techniques, fabrication, sound quality. So I started competing in the Iasca Sound Off world. I put together a system in my truck and I competed with that for a lot of years. And throughout the years, it really helped me learn more about fabrication, certain techniques. It helped me learn a lot about sound quality. And it really established a lot of friendships and relationships from those days that I still have to this day with a lot of people. Part of that education process during my initial Iasca days was I didn't really know what was good sound. I had a good sounding truck, I did well in the competition, I did well in the scoring, but they'd tell me stuff like, you know, your hi-hat doesn't sound real, and I'd walk away going, okay, cool, thank you. And I'd say to myself, what the hell is a hi-hat? So the one thing that I really decided to do was I needed to learn more about sound. I needed to learn what sounded good. I needed to have a point of reference to be able to build cars, tune cars, stuff like that. But I really needed to start at the basics. So I went into a local musical instrument store, quite a big store. And I spent like an entire day going from department to department, talking to the salesmen, talking to these people that loved music, loved musical instruments, and it really gave me a good foundation to know what I was now listening to, and furthermore what I should be listening for when listening to vehicles. I knew how instruments should sound in their natural environment. And one of the shops that I went to along my Iasca path was a shop down in Silverdale, Washington called Nuts About Hi-Fi. It was a very high-end store, had very, very high-end home audio equipment. And the one day we were there with the sound off and we were kind of bored, so one of the guys says, you know, you guys want to listen to something really incredible. So we went down into the room that they called the dungeon, and it had this huge system with Wilson Grand Slam speakers. And that couple hours with the Iasca disc and some other discs was just a huge educational moment, because this took the things that I had learned about competing, about staging and imaging, and had learned about musical instruments, really came to a huge high point, because now I got to listen to a system that was worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I can still remember how it sounds today. And that system has given me a reference point for the last 20 odd years on how to build systems, how to make them sound, and how to make them image and stage. And I think that there's a lot of people out there, they don't quite know how cars should sound, and you really need to go and find a reference point so that you have something to base what you're doing in these cars to. 1994, Mobile Dynamics, which I believe was the second car audio school to come out, came out to Vancouver for a couple weeks, and now I really had a chance to learn a lot of the basics, the basic fundamentals, the theory, the stuff behind the scenes of the job that I'd already been doing. A lot of the stuff that you don't really know. You know how to install, you know how to build stuff, but sometimes you don't really know exactly why you're doing it a certain way. And this was an awesome opportunity for me to once again take my education to the next level and learn a lot of these fundamentals about how our industry worked. So after competing for a couple years, I decided that to kind of take myself to the next level, learn some more about competing, learn more about the installation process, sound quality process, I decided to become an IASCA judge. So I went through some training courses that IASCA put on, and that really helped me understand even more about a lot of the process to do with the IASCA competition. It helped me a lot more as a competitor, but it also helped me in my profession to know more about some of the installation practices that they required, how to look at different things in cars. And then a year after that, I also became an IASCA trainer. So now, I was going to different cities and I was training people to become new IASCA judges. In 1996, being an IASCA judge and a trainer, I was invited to actually judge at the 96 IASCA World Finals. And this was a great opportunity because now I got to see behind the scenes on a lot of cars. You get to see their photo albums, the things that you can't see behind the scenes, the little tricks, bonus points, stuff like that they don't show you. Because in those days, everything was kind of a secret. You let out what you get bonus points for and how you do it. Well, 4 cars are going to show up in the next competition with the same thing. So a lot of stuff was very secretive. And I really remember this guy shows up, he's got this red Lumina, this all Rockford system, and his name's Steve Cornell. And a lot of people that have been in this industry for a long time know Steve. He had his Lumina, then he had an Impala SS with a couple of really amazing systems in it. But this car really opened up my eyes to a different level of attention to detail when it comes to competition and installation. I've always prided myself on the level of attention to detail that I have, but I felt like I was in a different league compared to Steve. He was so much higher than I was when it came to the littlest of things that made such a huge difference in his car. After the 96 IASCA World Finals, I went home with a very different outlook when it came to building competition vehicles and tuning competition vehicles. And this was all based on a lot of stuff that I had learned judging at the finals. So I came home, I took my Toyota truck apart, I gutted everything, and I started from scratch. I took every aspect of it, rebuilt it, redesigned it, and took everything kind of to the next level. 97, I had my best year. I won everything that I went to, regionals, highest points in IASCA. Every show I went to, I took first place. And the entire season got wrapped up with an IASCA World Championship in the Expert 1 to 600 class at finals. This kind of, for me, was the highest point of my career because I had taken everything that I've learned over the years and I had put it all into this vehicle. And it was a pretty proud moment. While at finals that year, I was offered a job with a chain store called Visions Electronics. They were opening up their first stores in British Columbia, and they asked me to come on as one of the bay managers and help to set up the new stores. So this was the first time really that I went to work for a big box store. And after a couple of years, I left Visions and went on to Future Shop. And between these two big box companies, it really gave me an opportunity to learn more about the behind the scenes operations of companies, learn more about the management aspect of it, running the stores, running the department, product ordering, and stuff like this. So spending these years at the big box stores really helped me for the next phase in my life, which was opening up my own store. Over the next few years working at Visions and Future Shop really gave me the opportunity to learn about the other side of the business, which was the management, the administration, the purchasing of the product that we sell and install. And this really took my career to the next level because now I was in upper management, I was running multiple stores, and it really taught me a lot about things that a lot of installers and salesmen take for granted when they're not running or managing stores. So while I was at Future Shop, I was invited to go down to Phoenix, Arizona, go to Rockford, and take their Top Gun course. I'd heard over the years about Top Gun and the things that they taught there and the level that the entire course was taught at. While I was at Top Gun, it really opened my eyes again to a whole different level of installation and fabrication techniques. The way that they were building things there and showing us how to build things were just incredible. You know, I came back with pages and pages and pages of notes. Being able to spend a lot of time talking to Mark Fukuda, who is, you know, my idol when it comes to this industry, was just incredible. Picking his brain about the things that you know, he's built and how he's built them. Being able to see his Blazer again that I had seen at the '92 finals and fell in love with was just incredible as well. The years that I spent at Visions and Future Shop really helped me for the next step in my career and education, which was opening my own company. When I initially opened my shop, cardio was all I did. And after a while, I come to realize that things were really changing with the industry. It was on a downward spiral in a lot of ways. And I decided to take my other personal passion, which is building hot rods, and explore it on the business side. So I started building cars, doing custom interiors, electrical wiring, slowly got into doing, you know, frame suspension mods, brake mods, and then we grew into doing motor mods and motor swaps to the point where we got to full, basically frame off restorations. And the education and the learning that I was able to get from doing this kind of work took everything else that I knew and really helped that part of it really grow tremendously. While I was building hot rods, I had a customer come in. He was a police officer, and he had his personal use police car, had a lot of electrical issues, and he knew that I did a lot of electrical wiring and I was very good at it. And he asked me if I could take a look at it. So spending a day in this car, learning about how police cars were wired and stuff, I started looking at another business opportunity that I wanted to explore, and that was building law enforcement vehicles, fire vehicles, city work vehicles, the whole outfitting industry. So I made some calls, made some contacts, started building some law enforcement vehicles for agencies, and this just started to take off right around the middle of 2008 when the bottom fell out of everything. And the learning curve that went into building these vehicles was pretty steep. The amount of information that I learned that goes into these cars is pretty cool. You know, I had to learn about in-car computer systems, different styles of GPS tracking systems, different radio networks for the different police agencies for communications, the systems that they use in command vehicles. It took a lot of, all of my electrical and electronics experience and elevated it to the next level. Pictures have always been an important part of my career. Early on, there'd be a lot of cars that I would see at shows, and I thought that the installs were really cool and not quite sure how they did stuff. So I would take a lot of pictures, I'd go home, I'd study them, and figure out how to build some of this stuff. And then when I started competing in IASCA, pictures became really, really important because you had to show all of the behind the scenes details in your install, in your photo log, to be able to get the maximum points on your score sheet. A few years ago, I started taking photography classes, and the reason that I felt that I had to do this was I wanted to learn how to use a camera better. I wanted to learn how the settings work. I wanted to learn more about lighting. And this would help me with my photo log for IASCA. It would help me with pictures of the cars that I built. And it would really help me utilize pictures to the best of my ability. The other thing that I started learning years ago was more about computers. Learning more about website design, the software used for developing pictures, for developing websites, stuff like Adobe Illustrator, Adobe Photoshop, stuff like that. I created a website for myself years and years ago, and it was basically an online resume. It had all the pictures that I had taken over the years of my work. After the 2015 Installer of the Year Awards, I learned about Matt Schaefer, and one of the things that I learned from him was about Instagram. And he really talked about how he took Instagram to the next level as far as his career, and used it to promote himself, promote his shop, to the point where he had tens of thousands of followers, and it was really had become one of his biggest selling tools. So in the last couple of years, Matt has really become an inspiration for me to step up a lot of my skills when it comes to things outside of the install bay, like the Instagram, videotaping, more photography skills, stuff like that. So I really want to thank Matt for that. I firmly believe that if you're not learning something every day, you're not really moving forward. You're actually moving back in your career. There's something to learn from almost everybody that you meet, from every job that you do, and pretty much every experience you have in life. So you really need to just keep learning. A lot of people figure they know it all, they don't have to learn anything more, and that's always going to hold you back. So just get out there and learn. Wherever it is that you can learn something from, just try and learn something every day. The cosmetic integration of the front stage on this 2015 Challenger was very important to me. The factory had used several materials and finishes, such as leather, vinyl matched leather, polished aluminum trim, high gloss paint, as well as some edge lighting around key points of the vehicle like the cup holder. All of the openings around our speakers in the front stage consisted of an edge lit acrylic trim, polished aluminum, high gloss black paint, and the leather match vinyl. The 9-inch mid-base in our front doors was mounted to a milled acrylic ring. The door itself was actually drilled with thread inserts, and then using stainless hardware we mounted the ring and the speaker into the door, followed by SoundSkin sound deadening. I took the stock door panel apart, drilling and grinding out over 100 plastic welds, separating the upper and lower sections, removing the existing vinyl and foam padding. I then opened up the 9-inch location down below and created a location at the top of the door for our 3-inch mid. I took the A-pillar, also removing its material, and opened up a location for our tweeter pod to fit into. I created an acrylic ring for each of our 3 different speaker locations. I bonded these to the factory panels, contoured them in with body filler, and then proceeded to rewrap each of the panels in our leather match vinyl. I reassembled the door with over 100 screws and washers to make sure that there would be no future rattle issues with the door once it was applied back onto the vehicle. Each of our speaker locations consisted of an edge-lit acrylic ring, a polished aluminum section, and then a high-gloss black painted section. Each of these panels were mounted to the factory panels using stainless hardware, so there would be nothing visible from the front of the car. Each of these sections also received a press grille with a small Morel logo for detail. All of the acrylic layers in the car would be edge-lit with green LEDs. Each of the acrylic layers in the car were going to be edge-lit with green LEDs. We wanted to minimize hot spots and also cut down the actual output for a very subtle look similar to the cup holder in the car. I took the opaque router tape, wrapped it around each panel several times, and then stuck the LEDs, and then with a couple dabs of glue, secured them in place so there was no chance of them falling off. The opaqueness of the router tape created a very subtle green output, very similar to what the cup holder produced in the car. Over the years, I've trained a lot of installers, a lot of salesmen, and one of the things that did take me a little bit to learn was that you have to teach people in the way that it allows them to learn. And what I mean by that is some people can just be told how to do something and they go and they do it and they figure it out. They read it in a book, textbook or whatever, and they just go and do it and they figure it out. Then there's guys like me where you really need to put things in their hand and walk them through it, let them actually do the work so that they can see that they have the ability to do it, and also know that it's something that's not hard to do with the right direction. There's been a lot of times where you literally have to let somebody walk into a mistake, because that's the only way sometimes that people learn. I know that's the way that I've learned some of the hardest lessons in this career is by making mistakes. And if you're not making mistakes, it's almost like you're not quite learning enough, because mistakes are the best teacher you could ever have. I spend a lot of my time helping the other installers here, helping the salesmen. With this being a new store in the company, we're really building a lot of it from the ground up. So I get to use a lot of my expertise on building new customers, going after dealerships, quoting jobs, and really setting up the company to excel with the information and knowledge that I've gained over the last 27 years. When it comes to education, I really believe, and I've said it probably a couple times already in this submission, I really believe in giving back. You know, I've spent a lot of years learning from a lot of people, and I really deep down feel that I need to give back that information. This industry is always growing. It's had ups and downs, but it always keeps going upwards. Product is changing, technology is changing, vehicles changing. The one problem that we have with this industry, and this is where the education comes in, is for a growing industry, the one side that we're not growing on is the people. You know, every year we seem to lose more people, and for whatever reason, we're not replenishing our staff. You know, we're not getting the new installers, we're not getting the new salesmen that we did years ago. So when you do get somebody in that has the ability or has the skill or the excitement or the knowledge or the drive, it's really important that you harness that and give them the proper education and training so that hopefully they are going to stick around and make this a career like so many of us have. This 59 Impala was a real treat for me to build, being an avid hot rodder and Impala fan, and being able to work on a 59 made this project really fun for me. I built custom ABS plates that would mount up under the dash utilizing existing holes that were either in the lower dash or behind some of the lower stainless trim that was on the car. Each plate is mounted into the car with 2 to 3 screws, and you can pretty much hang off them with the added bracing that was included on the plates and also the mounting points in the vehicle. Each speaker is mounted to the plate using threaded inserts and stainless machine screws. The next part of the vehicle was to build a custom lower center console. The car had a bench seat, column shifter. He wanted something to be able to have a 7-inch DVD deck. The DVD wasn't that important, but the fact that this car is so long, so low, has a ton of chrome on it, he wanted to be able to incorporate a backup camera, and that was the main reason for going with the 7-inch DVD deck. I mocked up the console out of cardboard, placed it in the vehicle to check seat clearance and ease of operation, being able to reach it from the driver's seat to reach the radio and to reach the air ride controller, which we're going to flush in the front of it. I designed the console to be able to flush the radio and the air ride controller into the actual console, so it didn't look like it had just been mounted to the face of it. I also wanted to have pleats in the side of the console that were going to match the removable side panels in the trunk. The mounting of the console was going to be a little tricky. I had basically 2 holes in that location under the dash, and there was no way that anything was going to be drilled into the floor or through the carpet in the car. So making a custom bracket out of aluminum, I was able to put enough bends in it that I was able to use these 2 screw holes with thread inserts under the dash, remove the radio trim, reach up behind with an angled driver, and be able to attach the entire console with those 2 screws with 0 movement in it. Then the radio and the air ride controller snap in once it's all mounted. All of the trim in the car was to be wrapped in an OEM material. The entire interior in the car was stock. So utilizing factory materials was kind of challenging. The company that made the aftermarket interior kit used, by most standards, a kind of substandard vinyl. So being able to wrap some of these panels with curves in it created a bit of a challenge based on the backing and the overall quality of the vinyl. but it did match in color and texture to the seats and the door panels in the car. We installed 4 threaded inserts into the floor pan of the back of the car, which our platform was then mounted to. Once the platform was solid and secure, we mounted our 2 sub boxes for our JL Audio woofers, one on either side. We then built our amp rack on the driver's side that would house a JL Audio 4-channel amplifier and a JL Audio monoblock. All of the wood in the trunk was painted black for a better cosmetic appearance if the car is ever taken apart and being worked on. With the foundation of the trunk installed, we then made another floor piece that went over top of our main floor platform, hiding the stainless bolts mounting everything to the floor of the trunk. This piece was wrapped in the same matching carpet that was used up front. The rest of the trunk of the car essentially consisted of 4 panels. Our 2 side panels, our taillight cover panel, and our air ride cover panel. It allows access to the taillight bulbs, and it also allows access to the fasteners holding the taillight panel onto the actual car. Behind the 2 openings in the taillight panel are threaded inserts in 2 of the braces in the rear of the car. Machine screws attach those to it, and then the covers are held onto the actual taillight panel with 4 magnets. The air ride panel while built out of multiple pieces is 1 piece removable and has 1 single screw behind the removable insert panel. Accessing the air ride can be easily done through that insert panel, so you can access the ECU for the air ride, the tank for draining, and any of the lines or anything else that might need to happen. The side panels consisted of the main flat panel and then a curved panel that covered over top of the wheel wells, with an insert that was removable and held in place with 4 magnets as well. The side panels are held in with 3 screws. 1 screw behind the grille screws into a threaded insert in the amp rack. 1 panel behind the taillight panel also goes into a threaded insert in the sub box. And the front of the side panel screws into the side trim, again with another threaded insert and machine screw. All these panels were then wrapped in the same matching vinyl that we covered the console in to match the rest of the interior. The pleats in the side panel were routed with the same spacing as the sides of the console. The build of this car was very cool, but somewhat challenging. We weren't allowed to drill any holes in the car for obvious reasons. Nothing was to be really visible in the front of the car other than the radio and the console. And the trunk had to have a very simple but elegant look to it to match the outside of the car. Everything had to be wrapped in factory materials to keep with the consistent theme of the vehicle. Around 1991, I decided to get into Iasca, and the main reason for me to do this was I thought it would be a great avenue for me to better my abilities, better my skills, and learn more about sound, which at the end of the day was going to help my job a lot more. I stopped competing around the year 2000, but I've always been involved in shows, whether it's judging, organizing, and just helping people out with Iasca, sound quality cars, RTA, the installation side of it. It's near and dear to my heart because it's basically put me where I am in this industry, allowed me to grow the skills and stuff that I have now. So I always, I'm always going to be involved in Iasca, and I'm even contemplating building another competition car and getting back into competing this summer. Just don't tell my wife that. One of the other things that I do is I spend a lot of time going to car shows, whether it be hot rod shows, other types of sound offs, SPL shows. One of the main reasons is I'm always looking to better myself, educate myself more with the latest trends, the latest things that are people doing, so that when customers come in, you know, I have a very good understanding of what is out there and what they could possibly want in their vehicle. And at the end of the day, I'm a car guy, and it doesn't matter what kind of car show it is, you know, I can't get enough of it, and I'm out there all the time. Just learning, looking at things, looking at how people build stuff, and if I don't know how they built it, it gives me something to try and figure out in my head or ask questions on how that was done, so that once again I can better myself in what I do for a living. One of the other ways that I really keep busy in the industry is now with social media and the internet. You know, the growth of the internet in the last 15 years or so has completely changed this industry. Before it was magazines and car shows that you got to see the latest stuff and talk to people. Now you can just log online and you can talk to anybody, ask them any questions. So, you know, I'm very busy through Facebook, Instagram. There's a lot of groups on Facebook that I participate in, and I try and spend as much time as I can helping people out. You know, if they've got questions of jobs, pictures that I've posted of jobs that I've done, being able to answer any question that I can from them, because it's, you know, I asked a lot of questions, I talked to a lot of people, to the point where I was probably pestering a lot of guys for a lot of years. And you know, the amount of stuff that I've learned, I really feel deep down that I need to give back. I need to be able to help other people, because people took their time out of their day to help me learn and educate me, and I really do feel that I need to give back and help other people. The other thing that I do spend a lot of time online doing, you know, along with answering questions about installation techniques and things that I've done, is I spend a lot of time helping people with tools. My father banged into my head, you know, at a young age, that you need to invest in tools to be able to do your job. You know, he would tell me, if you buy a tool for $100 and it makes your life, you know, easier, it makes the job go quicker every time you use it, and it's definitely a worthwhile investment. So I like to, you know, help people buy the right tools, you know, tell them options. You know, you don't always have to buy the most expensive thing. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. And there's a ton of different options out there. And being a real tool connoisseur, you know, I've seen a lot, and to be able to offer my opinion to people means a lot to me, to be able to help them out. Fabrication skills, I'm presenting 3 different styles of fabrication using different materials. We had a customer contact us. He had a very large and luxurious yacht, and he wanted to add some subwoofers to the main deck. He didn't want to have the benches cut in the boat for subwoofer mounting, and he didn't want to have any real visible boxes on this deck. In the center of the deck is a large wood table. Either end has big stainless steel hoops. What we did was fabricated an enclosure entirely out of PVC that would fit between each of these 2 stainless hoops. The stainless hoops were for some reason on a slight angle, so the back of the box had to be put on the same angle to accommodate. The box was braced and then painted an auto body color to match the rest of the gel coat on the sailboat. The 2 8-inch Sonus woofers mount into the box with flush magnet grills that are also painted to match the actual enclosure. The boxes are then mounted through the stainless steel hoops with stainless steel fasteners, and are actually easily covered by the cover that covers up this entire large table on the deck of the sailboat. Next up was a radio mount plate and a center console shift panel for a customer's Grand National. I wanted to build all these panels so that they had very thin lines in certain places, without crowding and cramming all of the products that had to go into this console in a very small area. So I decided that the best material for this would be acrylic. A new piece was built to fit inside the stock radio bezel. It was to house the vintage air, heater and air conditioning controls, a push to start switch, and a motorized flip out screen. I started by making a template for the vintage air controls. I then routed this opening into my main base of this new faceplate. I also drilled my hole for my push to start switch and routed the opening for my single DIN radio. I then made another template and chamfered the edges that would go over top of the heater controls as well as the push to start switch. Once these panels were created and joined together using acrylic cement, I then bonded strips of acrylic to the back side so that there would be a way to mount this entire panel to the factory bezel with no visible hardware. I then drilled and tapped 4 holes to be able to use machine screws from the back side to give it a seamless look. Inside the center console, we needed to build a switch panel that would be covered by the lid. The switch panel was to house 7 billet switches, and I didn't want the area to look cluttered up. I built 2 separate panels with 2 layers on each panel. The top layer had 5 switches mounted to it, and then another layer on top with a larger opening with a chamfered edge. I also did the same treatment to the front panel. I then took all these pieces, bonded the 2 layers together, and then took each section and bonded those together in a right angle configuration. Once the switches were mounted to the panel, I then bonded a small piece of acrylic, drilled and tapped a hole on the back side that was easily accessible through the shifter panel to mount this entire panel inside the compartment. The shift plate was to house aftermarket B&M shifter, a low car shift indicator. Behind that was to be an Escort 9500 display and control panel, and then in front of that was to be a fast engine controller. I started by making my base plate, which had the openings for the shifter, the indicator, and the 2 Escort pieces. Then on top of that, I created another panel with oversized openings and a chamfer on each one. Once these 2 panels were bonded together, I added a 3rd layer. The purpose of the 3rd layer was to overhang the opening by 1/8 of an inch. Once these 3 layers were all bonded together, I started to make a template for the fast engine controller. I transferred that template over to acrylic and then built an angled pod also out of acrylic that was then bonded to the main shifter panel. Inside the factory console were 2 brackets that were part of the console and part of the shifter mount itself. This allowed us to attach 4 magnets to the bottom side of the shift panel and make it easy to service all of the wiring and the shifter. The customer hadn't decided what finish that he wanted on these panels by the time we completed them, so he took them and eventually had them painted black to match the exterior of the Grand National. The final part of my fabrication skills section are some acrylic rings that I created for a customer's Toyota FJ. A lot of the interior trim came stock from Toyota, painted the factory body color. He wanted the same treatment done to the lower speaker grills on his door panels. I started off by bonding a piece of 1/2 inch clear acrylic and a piece of 1/4 inch frosted acrylic together. I started by routering my ring in 1/2 inch clear acrylic. I then bonded a piece of 1/4 inch frosted acrylic to the 1/2 inch ring with acrylic cement. Once I let the cement sit overnight, I ran the ring through the router to make sure that the 1/4 inch frosted acrylic was routed to match perfectly the 1/2 inch section. I took acrylic cement and ran it around and around and around the ring inside and outside. The purpose of this was to fill any pinholes or any gaps that were left between the 2 pieces of acrylic when they were bonded together. I then took the ring, routed a groove on the backside. This would allow the ring to sit flusher on the door panel and also have a gap for the LED strip that was to be installed. Once this was complete, I took a 1/4 inch round over bit, routed the entire outer edge of the ring. I took a 5/8 45-degree chamfer bit and routed the inside of the ring, leaving an 1/8 inch flat spot on the bottom of the ring. Once everything was routed on the ring, I sanded it with 120 220, and then 400 till the inside and the outside of the ring was perfectly smooth. I sent the ring then to the body shop. We had it painted the same base coat as the exterior paint of the FJ. Once I got the ring back from the body shop, I very carefully took 120 grit, sanded off the paint on the last 1/8 inch of the inside chamfer. I took 220, 400 to make sure that this 1/8 inch lip was perfectly smooth. I then sent the ring back to the body shop, had it clear coated. When it came back to the shop, I was able to install the LED ring in the groove that I had routed previously. The 1/8 inch lip at the very bottom of the chamfer had an even glow when lit up with the LED strip. With the LEDs turned off, you could not see the unpainted section on the grille once it was attached to the door panel. In the age of the internet, between the internet, social media, web forums, group chats, messenger, text messaging, really it's allowed us to stay in contact with everybody that you could possibly think of reaching out to. You see something cool online, a cool picture, and you don't quite know how they did it or the tools that they used or the supplies that they used to do it. It's really simple nowadays to just reach out, talk to them, pick their brain, have a conversation, or just, talk. Some things that I've done on Facebook, I've started several groups. I have a fabrication group that we try to keep it non-political, non-brand friendly. It's just about fabrication, no politics or anything. I've also started a Snap-on group where we talk about tools and everything. It's the largest Snap-on group on the internet. It's over 24,000 members, I believe, right now. So between these couple groups, it really allows me to talk to people, reach out to people, and have fun with all the people that share the same interests that I do. The other thing that I'm really proud of when it comes to the internet was several years ago, a lot of us industry people would hang out on the Car Audio and Electronics forum for the magazine. And it got to the point where there was a lot of crap and a lot of typical web forum things going on, and we really wanted a place where industry people could get together, talk, and not have to worry about the general public seeing what we're saying and know what it is that we're talking about, talk about pricing and policies and stuff. So Russell Harley started a chat group, web forum called 12 Volt Insider, and I was one of the founding members there, and I spent about 4 years growing the forum, building it, getting the sections, moderating it, doing the admin work, and to see what it's become is pretty cool, and it's something to be really proud of, because I think that web group, web forum, has really changed the industry because it gave us all a place to come together from manufacturers, distributors, installers, owners, and just have an open, free place for us to talk about our world without the outside world looking in on us. This Hemi CUDA project was brought to us by a local hot rod shop. They had built a custom aluminum center console for the car, but really didn't have the time or the skills to be able to build the interior panels. We started out with a pre-made fiberglass door panel that did not fit the car at all. It was too long, it didn't fit all the curves, nothing was there to mount it to the door panel or anything. This was the same case for the rear side panels. We took these fiberglass shells and used them as our platform to build our PVC plastic door panels for the CUDA. We started by making templates for the lower door section, as well as the low carb billet door handles. The lower sections of the door would house a mid and tweet, a removable grille with a press grille insert, and a matching tan carpet insert that would hide some of the fasteners for the lower part section of the door. We then had to cut the fiberglass shell to be able to mount the low car door handle into the mounting location on the door for the cables to properly work. We surrounded the low car handle with PVC panels to create an inset section for a billet aluminum strip that would follow from the front of the door to the back of the door, and this would match the insert that they had put on the console that they had built. They had provided us with some pre-made fiberglass armrests, neither of which fit the doors or fit the style of what we were doing in the car. We took them, cut the lower section off, filled it in, and reshaped them to give a more even flow. I took 1/2 inch wide, 1/4 inch PVC strips and created a framework that would follow the door front and back near the edge where it would rest against the weather stripping of the car. I masked off the door and attached them with a couple dabs of CA glue so they would hold in place. I then attached the fiberglass panel onto the car. The fiberglass panel was held onto the car using several threaded inserts and machine screws hidden behind both the carpet insert, the speaker grille, and the door handle itself. Using Norton speed grip, I then bonded this framework that I attached to the actual door to the door panel itself so that I had a proper seal between the door and the door panel with no gaps, and would seal properly against the weather stripping in the car. Once this was dry, we removed the car, added body filler to shape our door to match the rest of the contours of what we were doing on the door panels and the rear side panels. The other thing that was wrong with the door was they didn't seal against the glass in the car. We had to add weather stripping felt to the door to run up against the window, but we had almost a 1/2 inch gap all the way across and it was uneven. So again, using 1/2 inch wide strips of 1/4 inch PVC, I took the glass, rolled it up and down several times to find where the closest point was, so that there was no way during the rotation of this window, there was no way for it to hit the weather stripping that I was going to install. Once I found the perfect place, I took another piece of 1/4 inch PVC, taped it to the glass to account for the thickness of the weather stripping felts that would go on the top of the door. Once my strips were in place with a proper gap across the top of the door and the window, I screwed them all in place and then bonded them to the actual panel. And again, using body filler, we contoured those into the top of our door panel. Door panels came with no way to secure themselves to the top of the sheet metal of the door, so we made custom slots to be able to slide the door panel on top of, so there's no way for it to move forward in or out if somebody was to grab it or lean on it. The hot rod shop had provided us with a leather that they were using on the seat, and they had already wrapped the console in. The problem was this leather was extremely thick and had virtually no flexibility to it whatsoever. With a lot of heat and a lot of time, we were able to wrap the doors with no wrinkles at all. We also wrapped our grill inserts and then pressed our grill out of aluminum mat. Moving to the rear side panels, we were met with the same challenge that we had with the door panels. We had a flat panel with a piece of fiberglass attached to it, and nothing fit the car. Nothing fit the door jambs, nothing fit where the weather seal would sit, and they certainly did not sit flat against the sheet metal on the car. We drew out our design for the mid-tweet that was going to go in the back of the car and started building with our PVC plastic framework for the entire rear side panel, with a removable grille that would also receive a press grille and be wrapped in the same matching leather. Along the top of the rear panel, we also provided an inset section for a piece of aluminum trim to match the top of the front door panel along the side of the console. The panel for the side did not match the curvature of the vehicle, so once we had the panel basically built, fitting to the bottom side of the car, to the door jamb, and provide enough room for weather strip and pinch molding, we cut the top of the panel off, mounted it to the car using stainless screws that would be accessible through the speaker holes in the actual sheet metal of the rear quarter. We once again bonded this to the main panel using Norton speed grip so that it wouldn't be affected by heat or anything else. Being a roadster, there would never be a top on this car. Once we sanded everything, we had our gaps perfect and ready to wrap. The rear side panels were smaller than the door panels, but we had a lot more curves and a little more detail in these panels, so it made them equally challenging as the front door panels were to wrap in this extremely thick leather. One of the last tasks of the vehicle was to build sub-enclosures to be able to sit behind the rear seat of the car underneath the boot, which used to be the rear deck and the rear window of the car. Using the Focal subwoofers, we built an 1.5 inch thick front baffle and studded the baffle so that the woofers would slide onto the bolts and the nuts would be applied. Since the enclosure was built all out of PVC, this would help any issues we would have with the weight of the woofer trying to pull the fasteners out of the bottom of the box from the weight of the magnet hanging off of the back. The entire box was glued, screwed, and every seam was covered in Norton speed grip, so we made sure that we had a proper accurate seal. We also built a baffle inside the box for the magnet to sit on to add added support. The enclosures had to go into the car individually to clear the brace for the rear tonneau cover of the Roadster. Once the boxes were installed, then each woofer could be installed into the box with stainless nuts and washers. Once the woofer was mounted into the box, we were able to slide the enclosures to the center of the car and bolt them in the car. The final result of our panels pulled the whole car together. They perfectly matched, if not exceeded, the overall look of the car and flowed with the seats and the console that the hot rod shop had built. I'm very proud of the certificates, diplomas, and awards that I've won over the course of my career. The fundamentals of this industry that I learned from CMA and Mobile Dynamics really gave me a solid foundation to be able to build my career off of. The fabrication techniques that I learned at Top Gun, Mobile Solutions, and Kingpin University have really helped to mold me into the fabricator that I am today. And without these courses, I definitely know that I would not be where I am in this industry right now. The sales and management courses that I took at Future Shop years ago really gave me a different perspective on the other side of this industry. Making the top 50 and top 12 installer lists the last few years has been a very rewarding experience for me. The single greatest thing that I ever did for my career was getting involved in IASCA all those years ago. It's allowed me to travel all over North America. It's allowed me to see some of the most incredible vehicles, the most incredibly talented fabricators, and it's allowed me to meet so many people that have had such a huge impact on my life. A lot of these relationships have stood the test of time. The highlight of my career has definitely been the IASCA World Championship that I won in 1997. When I first got involved in car audio, one of my biggest dreams was to have a car of mine featured in one of the industry magazines. Car Audio Electronics, Auto Sound Security, Car Stereo Review. And the feeling that I got the very first time I was contacted by Auto Sound Security asking if I'd like to have my Toyota truck featured in their magazine was a feeling that was hard to explain. At the time, it just basically meant to me that somebody outside of myself and my little group of friends thought I was worthy enough, that the quality of what I had built in this truck was good enough for the world to see in their publication. And then over the years, getting into magazines like Car Audio Electronics, Pass Mag, Car Sound, Mini Trucking, on the pages of catalogs, etc. The feeling never goes away. It's one of the most rewarding things I think you could ever experience in this industry. Being able to tell a customer that you've built cars for SEMA is a very huge selling point to any customer. It basically lets them know that whatever it is that you do it at the highest level. For a customer, knowing that the person that they're taking their car to has built cars that are displayed on a stage as big as the SEMA show is a real big boost of confidence. My main vehicle entry is a 1967 Pro Touring Chevy Camaro. This customer brought the car in wanting a full custom interior that was going to match the theme and the overall appearance of his car. He had already had his Recaro buckets reupholstered in high-grade Italian black leather and Alcantara. He also had the headliner done and the carpet done in the car, but he really didn't have any confidence in the upholstery shop to pull off the rest of the panels. I started by making an MDF template of the door panel, and we were going to carry this design pretty much through the entire car. Everything in this car was built with a Mobile Solutions number 2 curve template. Everything from the door panels, the rear sides, the rear deck, console, and everything else. I started by making a PVC base for the door, gave us an outline for the speakers, and how we wanted everything to flow. I built an 1/8" ABS base that everything would get mounted to, and this would be mounted to the door using machine screws to thread inserts that we would put into the sheet metal. Once we bonded the ABS skin to the rest of the PVC, we really started to attach everything else to the door panel. Everything had the same chamfer, the same round over, and again, using the Mobile Solutions number 2 template, everything had a flow off the front door panel. To mount the custom armrests, we took aluminum angle iron, riveted to the door, and drilled holes that we would be able to sandwich the armrest on with a thread insert on the top section of the armrest, a bolt going through from the bottom section. The armrest itself was also created using a Mobile Solutions number 2 template. Using a 3D routering technique, we were able to shape the armrest in 3 different curves. We took the armrest, split it in half, that way we could easily attach it to the door panel, and separating the 2 halves was a polished piece of aluminum. The top half of the armrest had thread inserts put in. This allowed us to bolt the aluminum to the top half of the armrest. The aluminum plate was then threaded. Once we put this on top of the angle iron on the door, we could then take the lower piece of the armrest and using 1/4 20 stainless socket heads, bolted in from underneath without seeing any of the hardware. We took the insert for the center of the doors and the center of the rear panel, wrapped him in Alcantara, and sent him to the upholsterer so that he could stitch through the center section of each panel with the same thread, the same stitch, and the same spacing that he had done on the front and rear seat. The side panels had to flow with the door panels so that if you were ever to look at the car from the side, you would see no gaps and no change in the flow between the door panel and the rear side panel. Rear side panel obviously was also made with a number 2 curve template from Mobile Solutions. We drilled the sheet metal on the back of the car and used old style metal push clips to attach the rear panel to the car using just 2 clips per side. Once the panels were all wrapped in black Italian leather, we had to make inserts and speaker grills for the front doors. Both the inserts and the grills were made out of acrylic and then wrapped in Alcantara to match the rest of the installation. Each of the front grille assemblies also had a pressed aluminum grille insert in each one. Moving to the center console, the customer wanted something pretty basic, but he had a few requests. He wanted an armrest, he wanted a couple cup holders, a couple USBs for charging phones, and his power window switches. We started the console building a PVC base. This base would mount to the floor with threaded inserts through the sheet metal and using stainless hardware. The carpet would then go over top of this base and disappear. Then we started building the actual console again out of PVC using a number 2 curve and keeping the theme with having a heavy bolster at the top and then carpeted sides inset underneath the bolster. We were trying to figure out what to do with the armrest. and the client had already purchased a couple items for his car from Clayton Machine Works, and they were the door openers and the pedals in the car. So we took that design and mimicked it into the center armrest. We had this design water jetted out of 1/4-inch aluminum, sanded it, and then give it a brushed look to match all the other aluminum trim that was in the car. The actual armrest pad was a 3-piece sandwich with an Alcantara bottom, polished aluminum in the center, and matching Italian leather on the top. This was also mounted to the car using threaded inserts and stainless hardware. The rear deck was designed to house mid-range and tweeter, and in the center section have a bass vent for the subwoofer that was to be installed in the trunk at a later time. It was filled with body filler, molded and contoured to match the front door panels, and then wrapped in black Italian leather. The grills for the rear deck also mimic the front door grills in shape and design, also using a number 2 curve template and wrapped in black Alcantara with pressed grills with aluminum mat. The end result of this car was quite stunning. Its lines flowed through the entire car, all based off of the Mobile Solutions number 2 template curve. The flow of the car using the same black Italian leather and black Alcantara pulled the entire car together. Everything you looked at matched. The finishes, the textures were all the same. The flow of everything just worked perfectly in this car. The reason that I think that I should be Installer of the Year is over 27 years ago, when I fell in love with this industry, I've taken the same passion, drive, and creativity to this job back when it was just a hobby, then it became a passion, then it became an obsession, then it became a career. Since day one, I've always tried to put my best foot forward. I've always tried to put out the best product that I ever could, regardless of what my skill set or education was at the time. Would never put out anything that's subpar. It's just not who I am. Back in the day, my father and my grandfather really instilled in me that if you're going to do something, do it right. And I've lived those words ever since. I've always tried to make myself better. Every day, I'm trying to learn something, whether it's related to this industry or if it's something that I could bring to this industry and bring to my job. So I've always tried to make myself better. I always try to make the people around me better by teaching them, educating them, helping them out in any way that I can, because if they're better, then we're going to be all better here at the shop. Over my whole career, I've listened to everything that anybody has ever told me, whether it's things about myself, things about my job, my technique, my ability. And I always take it to heart, and I always look for ways to improve myself based on the feedback. The one thing that makes my job hard when it comes to things like this is being in Canada. It's a different world up here. And it's really hard to explain unless you're a Canadian or you've spent any time here in Canada. There's such a huge dollar difference usually between the American and US dollar that we don't get some of the products that you have in the States. You know, our product costs a lot more, so jobs cost a lot more. So the volume and the pool of work that we can be able to draw from to be able to present for awards like this sometimes is a lot less. So with that in mind, I've always spent the time, regardless of how big or how small the job is, to make sure that I always put my best foot forward and that every aspect of the vehicle is the best that it could be and always top notch. Because at the end of the day, even though I don't have the volume of work that some of the other top 12 installers have, I know very well that the quality of work that I'm presenting is just as good as anybody else, if not better in a lot of ways. I've always pushed the envelope when it comes to attention to detail. I've never been diagnosed, but everybody says I have pretty bad OCD, and I probably do. But I think that's given me an advantage over the years because I look at every little detail, whether it's something in this video, something in a car, something on my toolbox, and I have the ability to look at it and pick it apart and figure out how I can make things better. And I think that's really helped me throughout my career, my IASCA competition days, and pretty much everything that I do in life. Being able to excel at the highest level of attention to detail is something that not everybody has. And being able to look at everything with a certain eye, whether it's good or bad, has really helped me over the years. I've always been a firm believer that the price that a customer pays should not dictate the quality that they receive from me when it comes to the installation of their products. Whether it's a deck install or a full-blown sound system, competition, whatever, they should get the best quality job that I'm able to produce for them every time and every day for every customer. I want to really thank Mobile Electronics Magazine for doing these awards for the installers and the retailers and the manufacturers, because it really gives us something to go after in a job that sometimes is pretty thankless. Clients are always bitching at us for this or that, it takes too long, costs too much money. So to be able to have basically our own Grammys or Academy Awards is pretty damn cool. I'm really humbled to be in the company of the other 11 installers that are also going for Installer of the Year. And at the end of the day, we all push ourselves. We all try to make ourselves better. We try to beat each other out as far as, building cool stuff and upping one another. But at the end of the day, I'm pretty sure, we can all call ourselves friends of each other. And that's pretty damn cool. And these are the reasons I really think that I should be Installer of the Year.